You're listening to Barbell Logic, brought to you by Barbell Logic Online Coaching, where each week we take a systematic walk through strength training and the refining power of voluntary hardship. You're listening to the Barbell Logic podcast. I'm Matt Reynolds. I'm here with my buddy Thomas Frank. We're in the library, which is 75% whiskey. More of a whiskey library than it is a book library. Hey, welcome to the show.
Hello. Glad to be here.
We have been shooting some videos. Tom is a YouTube creator, for lack of a better term. Pretty well known. Over 2 million subscribers on YouTube. You've been doing this for a long time. You started really making sort of study hacks, college hacks, stuff for college kids to do well in school. And as you have graduated out of college and gotten into normal entrepreneur life and are a little older, you've also really sort of pivoted your channel more to productivity sort of videos, things for people who are now out of college and are working careers. And you did a lot of stuff, I know, during COVID about being productive working from home, setting up home desks. You've got all kinds of stuff. You're always looking at new technologies and apps and things like that on your phone to try to figure out what's the best return on my investment for my time. Is that fair?
Yep. I'm pretty much a crash test dummy for living a better life.
Yeah. So we know each other. We met at a conference at Menfluential, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and we were both speaking and just sort of hung out and, had dinner together and things like that. Last year, in February of 2020, we were eating dinner together and you were talking a little bit, kind of asking me questions about Barbell Logic and what we do. And you said, man, I would love to make a video at some point down the road about accountability and what that looks like for you guys. And I said, you know what? Here's what we should do. You should let me coach you and let's see how it goes. And then if you like it, great. And if not, that's okay too. I want you to be completely honest. And so walk me through the very beginning of like your choice to do online coaching and why you did it, as opposed to just sort of traditional join a gym, get a personal trainer, whatever.
I mean, I've always been a very DIY mindset kind of person. I've had a lot of trouble hiring coaches and, accepting help for things. That extends delegation as well in my business. So it had never really crossed my mind to get a coach for anything. And I think, we had that idea for the accountability video, but you had also suggested I would like to coach you. And I'm like, let's just try it, because I'm not anti-coaching. I'm not anti-delegation. It's just something that never crosses my mind, or I'm just so stubborn about doing it myself that I'll never consider it seriously until someone else says, hey, let's try this out. And I see the value of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I was excited because I was like, all right, I'm going to start coaching Tom. And then literally on the way home from Atlanta, I was doing a couple other business trips immediately after. I came down with COVID, third guy in the state of Missouri. And along with that, very quickly, all the gyms closed.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I've got this opportunity to coach you, and we have no access to barbells and no access to gyms. You were in the process of buying a house shortly after. I mean, there were all kinds of crazy stuff going on. And you live a pretty crazy schedule anyway. I mean, you're recording videos, editing videos. You're constantly, you are a legitimate creator. What you do on your YouTube channel, on your podcast in the past, you're not really interviewing people as much as you're the guy that's the subject matter expert, or at least that is doing the research to find out about the stuff to hack. So there's a tremendous amount of time that's put into probably R&D for you, so that you know what you're talking about. And so life was really crazy. So then we went, well, now how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this if we don't have access to barbells? And so what we started with, I said, you know what, man, I'm starting to see this with other clients. I think we can still train, and our listeners know that we sort of distinguish a difference between training and exercise. But I said, I think we can still train even without access to the barbells, at least for as long as we need to, until we can get access to the barbells. And so what did some of that look like in the beginning?
Well, I remember when we were getting set up with coaching, we had a thing where I needed to send you a list of what I had to work with. And it was really minimal. I remember rushing out to Dick's Sporting Goods to see what I could get. This was when everyone was at the height of the panic, buying toilet paper, stuffing their vans full of it. And all the plates were gone. All the dumbbells were gone. They had one box of the Bowflex ones, and the people in front of me grabbed it and walked away with it. I'm like, And so there was a 45-pound kettlebell. I was able to buy that. And I had 15-pound dumbbells, and then the door frame pull-up bar, and then a DDR machine. So you remember me logging
for your cardio.
Expert level DDR sessions.
Dance revolution for the cardio. So,
but yeah, for weight training, I had very little gear. But what I did have was about 15 to 16 pound sandbags that I used to weigh down my light stands when I'm booming out lights for videos.
you already had those.
I had those. So what we were able to do is I could hold a 15-pound dumbbell in each hand along with the sandbag. So I had max 30 pounds each hand. And my max weight that I could train with for probably the first 4 months of COVID was 60 pounds.
So we started to put together just the basic movements. And I remember we would do stuff like squats, air squats, and then squats holding the 45-pound kettlebell or the sandbags.
Mm-hmm.
We would do the same thing with deadlifts. We would deadlift the sandbags. We would press sandbags or kettlebells. We'd do a lot of push-ups.
Yep.
What are some other movements? I'm trying to remember.
We did the mountain climbers.
Yep.
A lot of pull-ups.
Yeah, a lot of pull-ups. Actually, that was a big deal being able to have that pull-up chin-up bar, because that was really the one thing you could do that was theoretically heavy, because you, at the time, you're weighing like 200 pounds, a little under 200 pounds.
Yeah, it was 189, I think, when I started.
And so you were able to do chin-ups and pull-ups and all sorts of various grips and whatnot with a couple 100 pounds, which is a lot more than you could press or squat or deadlift because you just didn't have access to that sort of weight.
Yeah. Oh, for press, we did eventually work up to handstand push-ups.
That's right.
So that's at least some decent amount of weight for press.
Same thing.
And I guess like there's outdoor gyms in Denver.
Yep.
If I would have driven a while, but actually those may have been taped off. We did a few CrossFit style workouts.
Yeah, we did.
So we did a lot of like sprints, and you had me go run and then come back in and do a bunch of push-ups, a bunch of the kettlebell
swings,
snatches and swings and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember doing all that. And the idea there was just, we're still trying to increase the total stress from really workout to workout, as well as try to work around your own life stress of what was going on. You know, you would, shoot me an email or shoot me a message on the software and say like, hey, I've got a crazy week coming up. We're putting out a video. I'm going to work 16-hour days. So if I get in the gym, or i.e. the gym, meaning your backyard or your basement or whatever it was. And you did a lot of that outside too. I remember doing that in the summer of 2020. But there were times you were like, man, I've got, 20 minutes or 30 minutes. But I was still pretty impressed at the progress you were able to make. We could still have evidence that we had quantifiable progress, because you could do, more push-ups or more chin-ups or more kettlebell swings or whatever that was. So when did we finally get access to the barbells and start to convert over from sort of the body weight stuff and the sandbags and the kettlebells to the actual barbells?
Yeah, this was either late June or early July 2020. So 3 to 4 months after we had been doing the whole sandbag extravaganza in my basement.
Yeah.
My rock climbing gym opened back up. A lot of the other gyms were still closed, but they opened back up, and you had to do masks. It was like super limited capacity, but they did have a gym.
Yep. How well do you feel like the body weight, sandbag, kettlebell, do whatever we could get our hands on, how well do you think that prepared you for the barbells when we got to the barbells?
I think it was great. I mean, I definitely remember still having some trouble, specifically with squat form. My legs would come forward, knees would come forward quite a bit. There were a few deadlift issues. And then the bench may have been the hardest to really nail, because when you'd give me feedback on the squat or on the deadlift, I'd be like, okay, I get it. I think it was just a mistake. I can probably, adjust next time. With the bench, it was like my elbows were kicking out. And it really took a lot of work to dial that back in. But even though I didn't have barbells at home, I am thankful that I had that time to work with lightweight, because for people who don't know my background, my dad was a powerlifter growing up. He had me lifting in the gym when I was a teenager. And this basically instilled this false sense of confidence in me. It's like, I know the technique for all these lifts, and it atrophies over time.
Sure.
The technique atrophies if you have nobody looking at you. Your critique of all of my lifts is absolutely proof of that. It's like, nope, you need to get back. You need to do the hip hinge, all kinds of stuff. So I'm grateful that I had that time to use light weights to really dial in the foundation of my technique before I had a chance to get under the barbell.
I could see you gain body awareness as we continued on. I mean, it's not like you weren't body aware or that you're a poor athlete, or you're not. You're a pretty athletic guy. You do tons of stuff, ride bikes outside. You're really into rock climbing. Now you're really into tennis. So we were doing all these things. Like, you weren't coming to train specifically to like get your powerlifting total up. So I mentioned at the beginning of the show, like, you've now hit an over 1,000-pound total in powerlifting in lifts that were not in a sanctioned event, but as your coach and as somebody, as a matter of fact, you're making a video for your channel they would have all been white lighted at powerlifting meet. So you've got a legit, really good total at this point. But there was still something that occurred before you got to the barbells where I watched your body awareness just get better. You talk about hearing some of the coaching cues and going like, man, it's hard to do the thing you're telling me to. Yeah. And it's really common for most people. And so as time goes on, though, it becomes easier and easier to actually do the cues because you gain that body awareness. So many people don't really understand even like where their body is in space, right? We often not really make jokes, but it's actually serious that, if you're dealing with, especially like a pubescent male, like 13, 14, 15-year-old boy, and you tell them to set their low back or put their low back in extension or stick your butt out or whatever the cue is that makes them at least understand that at a mental level, they don't have any clue where their rear end is.
Right.
They don't know where their low back is. You could get in those positions, but then holding those correct positions through the range of motion, through the movement, had we gone directly to the barbells, we probably would have started loading the weight a little faster. Mm-hmm. I agree. It did really set you up. So I hadn't planned on talking about this or mentioning this on this podcast, and I still may choose to cut it out. But one of the things that we are about to pilot among our own clients and kind of one degree of separation from our clients is a process really that I learned that came out of COVID, which is we have a program, I guess you'd call it, that is about to come out that we're going to call Before Barbells. All of our clients train with barbells, and they always will. I mean, the name of the company is Barbell Logic. But there are a lot of our clients who have family members, their spouse, their kids, their parents, their coworkers, the people at church, the people they hang out with on a daily basis. They can see that our clients are making tremendous progress physically, mentally, emotionally, and strength. They look better, they're healthier, all those things happen. And they want that too, but they're kind of intimidated by barbells. Mm-hmm. And they're like, man, I've never used a barbell. I'm going to hire an online coach. I'm going to put a barbell on my back and squat on day one. Or for you would have been physically capable of doing those things, but we just didn't have access to the barbells.
Yep.
With COVID, and I had this a lot. So one of the things that came out of COVID was I had so many clients that didn't have access to barbells, and we did the best we could with what we had. And I noticed that those who did that, especially the ones that were training before and all of a sudden with barbells, had to stop training with barbells and start doing sandbags and dog food bags and whatever. They detrained less than everyone else, right? So when they came back to the barbells, they hadn't lost as much strength.
Right.
And for people like you, and I had several like you, and at Barbell Logic across the board, we had scores of people that signed up during COVID. They were able to actually get stronger and more body awareness and healthy and improve their quality of life. And then as we were able to introduce the barbells back in, I think the transition was just that much easier for them. And so, yeah, we've got a program that's going to come out. It's going to be exactly like our normal online coaching service. It'll be the same cost. But the idea there is we're not going to be so dogmatic about we have to put a barbell on your back on day one. It is still called Before Barbells. It's not Barbell Logic's body weight program.
Right.
It is a body weight press, usually starting with body weight or whatever, milk jugs, whatever we can get our hands on. But the goal is to get our people prepared for the barbell. So you were able to do that. Start with barbell. Do you remember the weights ballpark that we used as we started doing the squats, the press, the bench press, and the deadlift when we started adding the barbell back in? Where did we start?
I would be able to look at this. I think I might not even have access to the old data, but I know with bench, like 185 for 3 was tough.
Yes.
With squat and deadlift, I could deadlift 225. I think I could deadlift 250. That was probably about the limit at the time. Yep. And then squat, I think we were around 200.
I think we started squat at 135, and you could have done more. We started conservative, and it was mostly just to work the form. And again, you talked about when you're holding a kettlebell out in front of your body for a goblet squat, it was so much easier for you to let your knees slide forward in the bottom. We put the barbell on your back, and I said, okay, now we've really got to teach you to bend over and sit back and use your posterior chain. And so we were able to just add 5 pounds or so every single workout for quite a while. I'm trying to remember, did we ever do full body sessions, or did we break it up into upper lower from the very beginning with the barbells?
I believe we started with the thing you were talking about yesterday, which was squat, deadlift, every workout, alternating press, bench press.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought we did. And then, so just your typical sort of linear progression, kind of orthodox linear progression workout, squatting 3 times a week, deadlifting 3 times a week, and then alternating the bench and the press. And then pretty quickly, not because you ran out of running room, but because it fit your life schedule better, we switched you to the upper lower split. And we really maintained 3 days a week. And again, I have a lot of clients that do the same thing you're doing, but they do it 4 days a week. They do 2 upper, 2 lower. And we just alternated. 1 week you would do 2 lower body sessions and 1 upper. And the next week you would do 2 upper body sessions and 1 lower. And we just kept adding weight and really never made a change to the basic 3 sets of 5, adding a little bit of weight every single session until really just the last couple months. I mean, just very recently. And even then, there were very minimum effective dose changes. And so we watched your squat get heavier and heavier. And, I remember you hit the 250 mark and then the 275 mark on squats and then the 300 mark on squats and then 315 on squats. And so in the process, what has your body weight done?
I'm at 215 now. Was 189 when I started, 215 now.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
I mean, the funny thing is I feel physically about the same. I don't feel heavy. I don't feel like I'm a tanker walking around, but it's definitely like I look bigger and people will say that I look bigger, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
I haven't put on a whole lot of extra body fat.
Yeah. Your waist, you haven't really had to change your pants or your waist size has stayed the same.
The only thing I need to do is I got to buy a new suit.
Because, anything that's going to be really fitted.
I had a tailored suit, 189.
Shoulders, arms, thighs are going to be an issue. Yep.
I've been a 32 waist since as far back as I can remember and still am.
Yeah. So hear that. So Tom was 189 pounds when he started, a 32 waist pant. So you probably have a 33 waist or so actual measurement, right? Because they lie to you about, so, and now you're 215 and you're still in the 32 waist pant. And so, again, I think a lot of people think going into this as they get started, they're like, I'm going to get bulky. You put muscle on where you needed to put muscle on. You put muscle on your shoulders and your arms and your chest and your thighs, but not on your belly, right? Anytime you gain weight, you're going to gain both muscle and fat. If we do it right and we don't push ridiculous, then we're going to be able to skew the vast majority of that weight gain to muscle weight.
Yep.
So, and the interesting thing about that is if we mostly put on muscle weight, but we still put on a little bit of fat, you have potentially a little more fat on your body today than you did when you were 189. But I'll bet your body fat percentage is lower because you've put on significantly more muscle.
Yeah.
So you put on a lot more muscle and a little more fat, your body fat percentage has gone down, even if you maybe have another 2 or 3 pounds of fat on your body. So it looks like you're leaner, still in a 32 waist, 215, and we talked a lot about this weekend being able to just probably stay in this ballpark for your body weight at this point. And so as you want to start to cut, we may drop you down to 210, go about 5 pounds lower than you are now. As we want to gain weight and try to push for new PRs, we may push up to 220, maybe go up to 220. But I don't think there's any reason for you to go heavier than 220 or 225 at max.
No.
Because of how active you are with the other stuff, right? So right now we've done a good job, I think, of pushing you just to the right amount of body weight. If you were 245, if we got you to 245, I think you would really start to recognize a law of diminishing returns on the rock climbing, on the biking, on the tennis, on all the active stuff that you're doing. So
plus, like, my dad was 240, 250 and had sleep apnea.
Yes.
I do not want to develop that.
Yes.
So I'm just like, let me stay, I guess small isn't the right term, but smaller than he was.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Your dad was a legit powerlifter, bench pressed over 600 pounds, legit bench pressed over 600 pounds. Super strong guy. So, you were raised in that as a kid. Home gym, right? Dad trained at home or did he train at gyms?
Incredible home gym.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Big home gym. I think about Kaylin, my 16-year-old. We've got videos of me deadlifting 705 in the garage at my wife and I's first house. And she's in the little carrier, the little car carrier that you put them in. And she's like 3 feet off the platform. And, Pantera or Metallica's blasting, and I'm doing a 705 deadlift, and the weights rattle. These are the days way before I owned bumper plates. Everything's in iron. And it's all she's ever known. And so it never really affected her. And so that was kind of your childhood as well. But so I want to talk a little bit about the accountability piece. So without it feeling like in your face advertisement for Barbell Logic, why did this style of coaching work for your lifestyle? And what did the accountability piece mean to you as you continue to make progress throughout?
So accountability, I think, is like the hidden ingredient to living a more disciplined and consistent life. And it's like something that I know 100% is true and yet have so much trouble adding into my life in different areas. And then when I do, I realize, oh my gosh, this was what I needed all along. So for a little bit of background for people, the reason I have a successful YouTube channel is because I found this app called Beminder when I was just starting my channel. You literally bet money that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. It has all these tech things you can hook up. So in my case, it was looking at my RSS feed, and I'm like, it needs to see 3 new pieces of content per week. And there's a little graph. And if it goes to the wrong part of the graph, you lose the money. That kept me super consistent for like 3 years until I started having sponsors. And now they are the source of accountability. Of course, we're actually back on Beminder because it turns out the sponsors don't care super about the date itself.
That's right.
The accountability there was what let me get past my perfectionism to put out videos on a regular basis. And yet I'm like, oh, but I can handle my own workout schedule. I can handle everything else myself. And then you offer to coach me, and I'm like, let's try it out. And just having the knowledge that there's somebody who is expecting me to turn in my records of my sets and turn on my videos is what pushes me over the edge from, okay, I don't have time to work out today, I'm too busy, to let's go get it done. And the other thing I know is like 9 times out of 10, I'm not actually too busy. There are some times where, yes, I am going to be putting in like a 16-hour edit. It's near the end of the month. This is a crazy video. We don't have time. But most of the time, it's I feel busy. I feel overwhelmed. But if I went and worked out, then I'm going to compress my work time. There's going to be a consummate increase in efficiency and intensity to make up for that compressed time. It absolutely works that way.
I love it. How much does it sort of make it count on, so a lot of times you're doing 3 sets of 5 across, let's say on squat, and I don't see the first set and I don't see the second set, but you hit record on the third set.
Yep.
How much difference does that make when you turn that camera on and go, I know I have to send this to coach?
I try really hard to not let it make a difference, because there's something in my head where I'm like, if I'm just performing the way I'm supposed to for the video, I feel like I'm robbing myself. And also I don't want to hurt myself on set 2. So I'm like, all right, if I'm going to do it as perfect as I can for set 3, I better do it the same way for set 1 and 2. But there would be times where I'm like, all right, I feel like I was a little loose on set 2. There's that concept, the Hawthorne effect, where people, they actually act differently when they know they're being observed. That absolutely kicks in. When the camera's on, I'm like, okay, double down on the fact that he said slow descent, pause for a second, then explode up.
Yeah, that makes sense. In nutrition coaching, which I think you're going to start doing after this week, where you haven't taken advantage of that, I want to see how that goes with you. One of the very first things we do, you talk about the Hawthorne effect, is we do a visual food diary. We make you take pictures of literally everything that goes into your mouth for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. And we tell people, please don't change anything about the way you eat. If you're sneaking Reese's peanut butter cups out of the desk drawer at work, just do it. It's okay. There's no judgment here. If you're drinking a 6-pack of beer at night, drink the 6-pack of beer at night. We just need to see what you're eating. And yet, always, when you take pictures of every single thing you eat and send them to a coach, you change what you eat.
I know. I haven't started the nutrition coaching with you yet, but I don't even know why I did this, but I just started using my FitnessPal and recording what I was doing. And I'm the kind of guy who would eat ice cream every single night, every night. And then there was one night last week when I'm sitting there watching a movie. I'm like, I really want a bowl of ice cream, and I know I'm going to have to log it. Nah.
Not good. Yeah.
There's always this moment where like I eat the last bite and I'm like, that was good, but now it's done.
Right.
And I'm not enjoying it anymore.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, there's a lot of diminishing returns there. We took you to Andy's Frozen Custard this weekend, which is a famous frozen custard place here in Springfield. A lot of our listeners have had that, and they've expanded all through kind of the Southeast. My wife and I will go get that once or twice a week. And most of the listeners know I've lost about 50 pounds over the last, really this year in 2021.
Yeah.
I go get a kid's cup. And so it's literally like a quarter of a cup of frozen custard. And it's just enough. The best part about frozen custard or ice cream, it's the first bite. It's the first 2 bites. It's, and there's a very quick law of diminishing returns there. Where like, I don't need to get to bite 40.
Nope.
I can get the little tiny kid's cup and have 6 bites, 5 bites, whatever that is, and go like, yeah, that's fine. I'd like to have this again in 4 or 5 more days. That's the other thing I've noticed. If I stuff myself on ice cream or Krispy Kreme donuts or whatever, I don't want it again for 2 or 3 weeks, because you're like, oh my God, I made myself sick on this thing, And so it's really about the moderation there. But yeah, that accountability is, I think, a really big deal. That goes multiple ways. Probably a lot of our listeners don't know. There's a lot of that accountability worked in with our coaches as well. So our COO and sort of head of coaching excellence, Andrew Jackson, we're always tracking on-time delivery. So we respond within 24 hours to you uploading videos. And now through the Block app, through our own software, we can automate the timing so we can see exactly how many of those we miss. And we get a weekly report of, okay, 97.2% of all of our feedback this week was within the 24-hour window, but 2.7% wasn't. And here are the coaches who were kind of the top, the ones that sort of missed more than anybody else. And we don't do that to be big brother and get people in trouble. A lot of times it's to reach out and go like, hey, is everything okay? I mean, a lot of times it's like somebody's traveling and they're trying to hotspot off their cell phone. People are closing on their house and it's just like a super stressful time. And for us, that's the time that we're able to then reach out and go like, hey, let's get you some coverage to help make sure that we meet the standard. And so that accountability works in both directions, both for the clients and for the coaches. And I think it's the thing that's really separated us from most of the other online coaching businesses, where most of those other businesses, you're purchasing programming from them.
Right.
With most of them, it's literally a template. So they might have like a lot of templates and you try to pick the template that kind of matches your lifestyle as best you can. And so you're kind of honing in on the right demographic. Those work perfectly fine, and especially for college age kids who just can't afford like really hands-on service for an expert coach. But the thing that you lose there is you lose the accountability piece. You're not reporting back to the coach every single day. You're not reporting back to the coach. The template program doesn't know when you have a 16-hour edit day. It doesn't know when, not you, but one of our clients or anybody is up at night, arguing with their spouse. It doesn't know when you're up all night with your kid throwing up sick, or somebody gets COVID in that house, or you get COVID, or you get sick, or whatever that thing is. And so by having not just personalized programming, but also the constant feedback on a daily basis, it keeps you from sort of sliding off the rails. Our clients don't have 100% compliance, but they do typically have about 85% compliance. And that's not for the workouts. It's literally for every single exercise of every single workout.
Yeah.
It also then works in these sort of fail safes so that when somebody does, and you've had times where you're trying to get a video out and you'll miss a workout or even a couple workouts in a week, it's much easier than for me to come in and be like, hey man, what can we do to get you back on? Like, can we get in and get a 30-minute session in? You're going to feel better. Rather than if you didn't have that accountability, a lot of times it just slides off the rails. And the next thing you know, you blink and it's been 3 weeks. You've done no workouts. And now you're like, now what do I do? Now, how do I restart? And so we haven't had to do that much. We've had times when you couldn't get your 3 workouts in. You maybe only got 2 workouts in a week, or even a couple weeks, you only got 1 workout in. But 1 workout, and this is the thing, when you work out, when I know it's going to be 1 workout, or you can actually kick up the stress in that workout, or kick up the stress when you come back, to make sure that we lose the least amount of sort of strength and training. So it's worked really, really well.
Yeah, I've noticed that working with you almost guarantees the intensity. One thing I was really bad about in college, I would get myself to the gym, which is the first thing, just get yourself there. But then I'd say, okay, I got to do 3 sets. I'd do 2.
Yes. Right.
And I'm like, all right, I'm tired.
Yep.
There's nobody there saying do the last set.
Yes. Yep.
But when it's on the program and you got to record it and you have to write down all the sets you did, then I'm going to get it done. Yep. Unless I don't have time.
So you just hit 1,005 pound total here at the house, and we left some weight on the platform on the deadlift. We kind of went for broke. We let you hit the 1,000 pound total, and then we went nuts on it, try to get a big PR, and you just missed that one. So realistically, you're in somewhere that 1,035 probably range for a total.
Yeah.
For people who are listening to this who are either at the very beginning of their strength journey, in that first month or 2 of their strength journey, or haven't started it yet, what are some of the tips that you can walk through? Like, these were some of the things that you had to deal with over the last, 6 to 8 months in the process of going from really no barbells at all to 1,000 pound total. What are some of those things I think that would be helpful for other people to go like, okay, like you can sympathize with the things that they're going to go through because you've now walked through that fire?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is there are going to be days where you just don't have time, or where you do, but you go in and you're just not hitting your linear progression. It just feels terrible. Like, that happens. And you just work through it. You put up with the stress that you can. And the next day you come in, it's probably going to be so much better.
Yep.
So we say linear progression. And for the most part, in my experience, it has been, which has been good, but it's not always perfectly linear.
Yes.
There's ups and downs, but as long as you're staying consistent, then over time, when you zoom out, it does look linear and you eventually get there. I remember when 1,000 pound total seemed impossible.
Yep.
I'm like, how am I going to get to that? especially when I first started working with you and I still had those limiting beliefs where, oh, I've got this messed up knee from high school. I'm tall and gangly. Like, I'm not built for powerlifting. It's weird having grown up in a powerlifting group and culture, because we would go to meets and see all like the shorter, stockier guys having an easier time because their range of motion wasn't as.
Sure, of course.
And my dad would be like, yep, sorry, Thomas, you got an extra 3 or 4 inches to lock out that bench press.
Yeah, you're what, 6'2"?
I'm 6'2", yeah. Pretty long arms, pretty long legs. So my range of motion is pretty long. But I think it was just a completely limiting belief, because now working with you, I now have the form locked in. Like, you critique the form when I do it. And now that I know how to do it, I realize, nope, all that stuff was just me self-limiting. I've been able to work past all of it. Am I going to be a championship lifter someday? Probably not, but I don't want to be.
Sure.
You know? And now that I've hit 1,000, I'm like 100% confident that I could hit 1,200.
That's right.
Or do the 3, 4, 5, like you were saying.
Yeah, that's the next step for you, is the 200-pound press, 300-pound bench, 400-pound squat, 500-pound deadlift. I think is entirely doable for you, and not doable in 2 years or even 1 year. I mean, I think that you could probably hit all of those numbers by the end of 2021. So in another 5 or 6 months, I think that's entirely doable. Yeah, I would like to touch on too, one of the self-limiting things that you had in your head were the injuries. Like, I'm looking at you right now. You have got not attractive knees. The knees, and
especially
one,
the left one.
Yeah, and one specifically, your left knee, it looks like your kneecap is about 6 inches long.
Yeah.
Because you had a pretty bad injury way, way before we ever met.
High school, I think.
Yeah, and it looks like the worst sort of Osgood Schlatter, but I don't actually think that's what it is, even though it's in that same area. So that's just below the kneecap, is really swollen. You've got a lot of additional sort of, it's laid down additional, I don't know, additional sort of calcium deposits. You've got some sort of floating bone spurs in there. You also had a tendency to hurt your low back a lot before you came in and started doing barbell training. And so what have those things look like? Like, how are the knees doing? How's the back doing? What sort of injuries have you had to deal with? Any injuries over the last year? How has this training affected those?
Well, I'll start with the low back. I was dealing with constant low back pain when I would just sit and work. Before I started the barbell training with you, it would be a case of, okay, when I go to the rock climbing gym and I actually do like a little bit of a yoga routine after climbing, it would subside and it'd be better for a while. And then if I'd get lazy and I'd stop doing that, it would come back. Now that I do the deadlifts, it's probably the deadlifts and the squats combined.
Sure.
I just don't have it. And I don't even, like, I probably should be better about stretching after I finish lifting now. I'm not super good at it.
Yeah.
So, and like the stretching is probably more important for me if I want to keep climbing and like being flexible for that kind of thing. But, you know, the resistance training itself has basically erased the back pain, which is great for when I'm doing work and not being distracted.
Do you know why? Like, logically, why do you think that is?
So, I mean, you were telling me at dinner the other night, we have like this stacked up spine and we're really evolved on a very, very long period of time basis to walk upright. So we have muscle that helps to support it. And I'm guessing just sitting in a chair all day being sedentary lets all those muscles atrophy.
That's right.
You know?
People tend to injure, for the most part, the joints, tendons, ligaments, far less than muscles. Certainly you can strain a muscle or even tear a muscle, but it's fairly rare. Most people that come in, especially people who are untrained or sedentary, almost never have muscle problems. They have knee problems. I have back problems. And it's usually around a joint in your back. It's a disc or a facet joint or whatever. And one of the things that I think it's so logical, but nobody thinks about it, is that if we build up the muscles around the joint, then the muscles get to take the majority of the load, of the stress, of the moment force, so that the joint doesn't have to.
Yeah.
So when we get stronger, you know, those big erectors, what is basically like the loin, like a strip loin from a steak, is those big erector muscles that run down your back. The bigger and thicker and stronger and denser those things get, the more they're going to actually protect the spine. The spine doesn't have to try to do everything on its own. It can't. It's literally like, you know, it's a bone and a jelly donut and a bone and a jelly donut. And so to be able to surround that thing with muscle then protects it from further injury. So what has happened, and we've had a couple times early on where you would tweak your back a little bit, whatever that means, right? This thing where you get this sort of, everybody's tweaked their back before, where they're like, ooh, that was weird. That hurts a little bit. That's sore. And maybe there's some soreness running down the back of one of your legs, or it just feels like really tight. And we took 2 weeks off, right? And didn't do anything.
No, we
Nope.
did not. It wasn't like I was in the middle of a set and goes, oh, super fast tweak. It was like I would finish a set of maybe those really slow decline kettlebell one-arm deadlifts we're doing, 45 pounds. And I would have fairly acute pain in the lower back. And what I thought is, okay, this means acute pain means stop doing it. And I tell you, and you're like, no, it's not the same kind of acute pain that you get from an injury or an actual tweak or something. It's you need to strengthen these muscles.
Yep. Yeah. Very rarely when we get an injury, and again, most injuries that we see with our clients don't happen in the weight room. They happen outside the weight room. They happen, you go snow skiing and you hurt yourself snow skiing, or men's basketball league, or even talked about this yesterday. You drop your keys on the floor and you pick them up wrong and you twist weird and boom, it hits,
Yeah.
especially when you're not somebody who's been training for a while and you haven't built the muscle up around your back. You end up being vulnerable to that. Rarely do those things get better when we just sit around and do nothing.
Yeah, and actually that lines up with me. I've had 2 injuries of the sort since starting to work with you. Neither have been in the weight room.
Yep.
First one was just snowboarding, stupidly went over this tiny lip, fell the wrong way, fell forward, and chickened my arm out. So pretty badly sprained my shoulder. I thought that I had done something much worse.
Yep.
I forget what the thing.
Yeah, the labrum or your rotator cuff. You thought you had a
I thought
rotator
I
cuff.
tore the rotator cuff. I go to the ER and she's like, well, if you had torn it, then I'd be having you try to do this raise exercise and your arm would just drop. So it's not dropping. You just sprained it pretty badly. What they said is, we're going to give you this sling and we want to keep the arm in the sling for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And what you said is like, all right, have it in there for like a day or 2.
Actually, I said, it's your call. I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if you choose to move through the range of motion, I think you'll be okay. Right. And so one of the deals was, I don't want to have any of my clients train with debilitating pain. If you had trained on the shoulder and it made it feel worse, like the pain got worse, then that is a good indicator that we should not be doing this, right? Our experience tells us typically when there is some sort of acute injury, something that has occurred, and we work through full range of motion or as big of a range of motion as we can without debilitating pain.
Right.
Often by the end of a couple sets, it's better than it was when you started. It's not fixed. It's not healed. It's better than it was before you did it. And that tells us that we're doing the right thing. And so that's a really simple way to just go like, okay, so same thing. If you have a muscle strain or, painful knees, again, your knees, that left knee was this sort of constant problem for you pre-training. And we just taught you how to squat and put most of the moment force back on your hips. Like, okay, if you've got a bad knee, let's figure out a way to make specifically the quads on the front side of the leg and the hamstrings on the back side of the leg. Let's get them as strong as we can without overtaxing the knee itself.
Yeah.
And so let's put most of that moment force, most of that rotational force back on the hips, and your hips were super healthy. You've got these giant muscles of the glutes and the hamstrings that can control the hips, and the adductors that control the hips. And it still allowed us, because the knee still bent and went straight on a squat, then the muscles around the knee still got strong. And like, you never have any knee problems at all. One time you said, like, my knee hurts, right?
Never.
We figured out how to not let your knee slide forward.
Yeah.
We stay back on midfoot. You've had no problems at all in the weight room.
Yeah. And with the shoulder, like, we started holding that 1.25 pound fractional plate.
That's right.
Just going up or doing a circle or something, or raised up. I mean, now there's no difference in strength, and I got full range of motion back.
Yes.
So, very glad that I went through that rehab process.
Yeah, much faster than normal. So again, part of this is too, I think that for years, and look, first, everybody knows I'm not a doctor, I'm not a physical therapist.
Yeah.
But for years, the common thing that people would say when you hurt yourself would be, well, we have an inflammatory response. It inflames. It gets, it literally inflames. And we got to get the inflammation out of there. And it seems that the data is showing that that's just not the case. And so if inflammation were literally the problem, then we could actually just rest the thing, take anti-inflammatories, get the inflammation out. But that doesn't work, right? So instead what we do is we go, well, let's find a range of motion that you can do that keeps the pain on a pain scale of 1 to 10. Let's keep it at a 3 or under. And let's make sure by the end of the workout, it feels a little better than it did when we started. And then what we find is that, just like you said, we started with the micro gains, fractional plates, using a 1.25 pound one plate, doing internal rotations, external rotations on the shoulder, and then added a little more, increased the range of motion a little bit. And eventually I was like, all right, let's try to do the empty barbell and let's press the empty barbell. I know you're strong enough to press the, that wasn't the issue.
Yeah.
It's, can we press the empty barbell and still keep the pain threshold 3 or under on the pain scale? And you did. And then we started adding a little weight, and then here we are. When was that you hurt your shoulder?
That was, I think it was February.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was this year. It wasn't that long ago.
Yep.
Day before yesterday. You then bench press 280. Is that right? 280 bench press.
And then last week, overhead pressed 180.
Yeah. And overhead pressed 180. And then you squatted 345 yesterday, and you've deadlifted over 400, 415 or something.
415 for 2.
Yeah.
And that was before the injury. So we hit, 380 here?
380, 385, really, as your kind of last, like, hey, let's hit the 1,000 pounds. And then we jumped right to, I think, 425 or something like that.
Yeah.
Just barely missed that one. So, man, you've gotten really strong. You've done it in a way where your goal wasn't singular to get strong. You didn't come to me and say, like, all I really care about is getting strong. As a matter of fact, it wasn't really that at all. You knew that strength was important. It was certainly one of the most important things we did. I wanted the strength training to support your lifestyle, to support your active lifestyle of all the other things you were doing. Not one time, I don't think, have I asked you to not do something, like don't ride your bike or don't go rock climbing, or, you know, I don't want you playing tennis right before you lift, because at this point your body is now starting, you've really gotten into tennis. And so you've gone from 0 tennis to, if I'm not careful, or if you're not careful, you'll go out and play tennis for 4 or 5 hours or 8 hours in a single day.
Too much tennis.
Yeah. And all of a sudden it's like, now I have tennis elbow. And that's like,
and that's the other injury.
That's right.
I got the tendonitis in this right arm right now. So we have to start working on that too.
That's exactly right. And I've got a plan for that, to work through that and to continue to strengthen that tendon. And I really believe in the next month, you're going to be able to go out and play tennis as much as you need to, as much as you want to, and that tendonitis will not be an issue. Now, tendonitis is a tough deal because there's so little blood flow to a tendon. So actually, when you injure a muscle, it's so much easier to repair the muscle because there's so much blood flow to the muscle, right? It brings fresh nutrients and fresh blood. Tendons are a lot tougher, right? And you think about, even from, you know, biology or anatomy class growing up, you can see that tendon coming off the muscle and it goes from red to less red to white.
Yep.
It's white because there's no blood flow to it. So that's one of the hardest things about the tendon, is how do we get the tendon stronger and rehabbed while not really ever being able to bring fresh blood flow to it. So it's a little challenging to do, but there's, you know, we've got great strategies, certainly things that I didn't discover or create myself. But at this point, we've got 100 years or so of people that have done this and figured out mostly what works. And so we'll do it. So, man, you've done a great job, you know, being able to support not just your active lifestyle, but your busy lifestyle, so that you can train, and you don't have a set time and a set day every single week. Like, you don't work an 8 to 5 job. You know, your Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday don't all look the same at all.
Yeah.
And one of the things I love about you being able to do online coaching is that you can train when you want, where you want, anytime you want. Sometimes you train at home. Sometimes you train at the gym. You've kind of still been, for the last year, you've had some pretty janky equipment at the house, and you just did a massive upgrade. And so you're going to go home. You haven't even put together that you've got a new Rep Fitness, you know, the 4,000 super nice squat rack. So you're going to go home, put that thing together, and you're going to have like this beast of a squat rack at home. And that kind of makes it fun too, when you've got nice equipment, to be able to walk out into the garage and go like, hey, I'm going to hammer this. This is pretty fun.
I'm excited because I was using a Dick's Sporting Goods bench. It just happened to have the holes on the back of the posts too, so you could flip the catch pins
and
around.
Long posts so that you could squat out of it.
So
but
it's not safe to squat off.
Pretty dodgy.
And then the problem with my gym is they don't have Olympic diameter plates.
Right.
So every deadlift set is actually deficit deadlift.
Yeah, that's right.
Which it creates like this decision fatigue over like, oh, I have a squat deadlift day. Do I go and make my deadlift less fun, or do I make my squat less safe in the garage? Yes. So I just got the power rack because I'm like, I don't want to deal with, I want to have the equipment I need for everything.
Yeah. Now you've got a good way to do that. So couple things. One, where can they find you? And one of the things I think that's going to be cool is, probably pretty close to the time this podcast comes out, you'll be releasing the video that we recorded this last week. So tell the listeners a little bit about that, and then they can actually see the journey rather than just listening to your voice here. What is that going to look like?
Yeah, so we wanted to make a video. It'll probably be titled How I Hit 1,000-Pound Lifting Total. Sort of going through that journey, but also making it an educational journey for the viewer on how they can get started along the same path if that's what they want to do, or at least get started with strength training. So we have a whole interview with you. I'm going to chop up, weave that into the story. We have like 15 camera angles of actually hitting all those lifts, and then a bunch of B-roll. So it's going to be kind of like a documentary style thing. I'm pretty excited to put it together. I've done a few videos in this style It's very challenging to make them that way, but it always comes out really good at the end.
Yeah.
So that'll be pretty cool. My YouTube channel is just youtube.com/ThomasFrank. And then everything else is over at thomasjfrank.com.
If you like the Principles podcast that we do, where we talk a lot about productivity and things like Pomodoros and work efficiency and, urgent versus the important, you will love Thomas's YouTube channel. So, and also if you're younger and you're still in the college space or the educational space, the archive of amazing videos there for when you were doing those things is outstanding as well. So whether you're still in the educational space or most of our listeners being just in somebody who is living a busy lifestyle. Maybe they're going back to work at the office. Maybe they're working from home. Maybe it's split between the two. Kids at home, spouses, hobbies like lifting. Love the videos that you're putting out to just talk about how to get it done in the most efficient manner possible. And also the most enjoyable manner is the other thing I like you can tell that you really like to use apps, the software, the sort of tips and tricks. It's not shallow. Like you really get into doing these things and testing these things out. And, you've stayed here all weekend and I've watched you use a lot of these things that I see you talk about on your channel. And I often sometimes wonder when people are doing that, like, do they actually use that stuff? But you do. Like you're super into that stuff. So it's super helpful if you're looking for a lot of efficiency tips and work and productivity and how to get things done. You talk a lot about motivation versus discipline and what that looks like. And so, great channel there on YouTube. Dude, I'm super excited. 1,200 pound total coming up soon.
Yeah.
For sure. Excited to see you training out of the new rack. And we're going to get you some nutrition, let you do that. And then I want to see you test out the academy and see what your thoughts are on our educational side, since you've got so much of that background, and see what you think of the academy. And maybe one of these days you'll sneak in and be a coach.
Sweet.
So awesome. Thanks for doing the show today. Thank you guys for listening. If you got value out of this podcast or other times of the podcast with Barbell Logic, we'd love a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts specifically, or anywhere that you listen. You can say nice things about us. We love to hear some good constructive criticism, things that you like about the podcast, things that you think we can do better. We're always trying to get better every single day. It means a lot to us that you take an hour or so out of your day or out of your week to listen to the things that we have to say. This is a good podcast to send to somebody who is thinking about getting into strength training or is just getting started and isn't entirely sure what this is going to look like over the next year. Thomas has just a really good testimonial for, honestly, you're not an outlier. You are the norm. Like the amount of body weight you've put on, the amount of strength you've gained, it's pretty normal. And so, at least for a male, for somebody who is 30 years old, somebody sort of in your general wheelhouse of a demographic, you can probably follow along. And everybody's individual, but it's a pretty typical story. And so if you want to see what it kind of looks like to have somebody who's done it just before you, it's a good story to follow.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next week.